join me in welcoming to the stage our chief guest, Mr. Suresh Narayanan, former chairman and managing director at Nestle India Limited.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and it's a privilege and honor for me to be here today. So thank you, Ankit. Thank you, Sumanta, for inviting me to the RethinkHR Conclave. It's a bit ironic that you need the past to look into the future. I represent the past, right? And all of you here represent the future. And my purpose here is not to deliver a lecture on organizational development or organizational practice or reward recognition mechanisms or what have you, but to just put in some thoughts. Having spent 4 decades in the corporate world, I think it's time for me to now reflect on what are some of the principles that have made the organizations that I've worked in successful, and what has made me as a leader also competent and successful over a period of time. So, if you are looking for tips on how to restructure your organization, I'm afraid some of the later sessions that will happen will probably teach you that. But there is one thing that I'm very, very passionate about, and that I've been passionate about in my career, and especially in the last 10 years when I was the chairman and managing director of Nestle, is to get HR a seat at the table. I think one of the dilemmas and one of the ironies and one of the sad parts of corporate India, and I don't seek here to generalize, so please don't get me wrong, is that HR is seen as a function. HR is seldom seen as a strategic partner. In part, the blame for this is of course on the leadership, the CEO or the management team or whatever you define it. And a part of the blame goes to you yourself as HR leaders. Because by and large, you have propagated yourself as being comp and BEM managers, right? Compensation and benefits, reward recognition, putting some training modules, L&D, right? Diversity management, a little bit of everything, but you don't get yourself a seat at the table to discuss corporate strategy. How many organizations are here which first discuss people strategy and then discuss business strategy? What we do is we discuss business strategy first, and there is an outcome which is called competency map. It is called headcount management. It's called talent management. And these are then disaggregated and disseminated to various people. And some of that output comes into Sapphire Human Capital as well, in terms of recruitment or retrenchment or what have you. And the show goes on. But one of the things that I think all of us understand is that today we are in the throes of an economic volatility of unprecedented proportions. Whether it's created by a group of individuals or a group of countries is not for me to debate. But the fact is, economic volatility has become an absolute essence of all the industries that we represent. Whether we are in consumer goods, whether we are in IT, whether we are in pharma, whether we are in fintech services, whether we are in running GCCs, whether we are running innovation hubs, whatever you are the business in, is that the economic volatility is making life very much more difficult for each one of us. The level of predictability that we have got is becoming next to negligible. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. All those who are recipients of the 100% duty diktat that has been given by Mr. Donald Trump yesterday on the pharma sector must be quaking in their boots as to how it's going to affect generics. Today it is talking about branded, tomorrow it could be generics. What's going to happen to our industries? Which means that economic volatility is here to stay. Second, The laws of physics of entropy is in full play, which means that the degree of disruption that you're going to see, whether it is geopolitical, whether it is economic, whether it is social, you see around the world a generation, we call them Generation Z, but let's not forget, ladies and gentlemen, that there is Generation Alpha that is already in the workplace. And when this is happening, we have to create gainful employment for all these people. Imagine having a country of 12 million additions to the workforce every year and only a third of them finding jobs. What are you going to do? How many food delivery, food aggregators and how many service aggregators are going to absorb these people? So that is the level of entropy that we have got. At the same time, there is a huge amount of energy that is being released in the system. The energy comes in the wake of technology. We have now graduated in an era where natural intelligence is no longer important. It is artificial intelligence which is becoming important. So in this AI age, technology is going to be a big disruptor. How is it going to disrupt your organizations is not just a task that is left to the CEO and to the management team, but it is incumbent upon you as HR leaders to be able to also put in your hat in the ring and look at how economic disruptions and how technological disruptions are going to change the workplace. A few things are going to happen. People like me and few in the room here are being used to a ladder-based, template-based career management. I joined as a management trainee in an organization, went up by dint of hard work or pluck or luck or being at the right place at the right time or whatever, right? Landed up being the chairman of the company. Those days are gone. You're not going to be having these kind of templates for career management. And yet, how many organizations still have performance development systems that are archaic? We choose our leaders based on individual competence and put them into leadership roles of leading hundreds and thousands. You don't question it because you are more paid for the timeliness of it. It has to be timed, and then there is a bell curve, and then there is a cutting of the bell curve, and then there are 10% of people who are told that you are no longer good enough, etc., etc. You're cutting some edges, you're cutting some organizational pieces in order to ensure that the larger good happens. But never do you look at what is the impact on the organization and what is the impact going forward. Which means there are three areas that are going to be touched very critically. First is organization structures are going to be fluid. Fluidity is going to be the answer of the future. Flexibility is going to be the mantra you're going to operate with, and not rigidity or a template-based management. Organization structures are going to get more fluid. The emergence of gig workers is going to become very much more rampant. You're going to have people for particular points in time. It's almost like harvesting apples or mangoes or whatever. You need labor at a particular point in time, and after that you don't need that labor. And technology is going to dictate it. How it changes the load of leadership. The leadership that we have grown up with, by and large, most of us, is what is called command and control leadership. Right? The first chairman that I knew was a person whom I could not even talk to, because he would look at me and say, "Who's this fellow?" But you respected him because of the stature of the person and the position he was in. So today the command and control leadership is moving into being leaders who are looking through the periscope. The leaders of tomorrow are not going to be the biggest technologists. They are going to be the biggest humanists. You can kill your organization by just trying to replicate and put in technology mindlessly. And as I keep repeating to every audience that I get the opportunity to, technology is meant for the benefit of human beings. Human beings are not meant to be for the benefit of technology. So the use cases of how organizations are going to be structured, how careers are going to be managed, how talent is going to be managed, your whole talent management cycles are going to change. You as HR leaders must be sitting at the table and saying, hey CEO, 10 years from now, these are the skills that we need to build into this company. How often do you see organizations suffer because the skills are not there? It's a bit like now what one was reading the papers yesterday on e-commerce companies falling short because they don't have labor in order to manage the logistics. That's a business revenue lost that is lost. And that's exactly what is happening in organizations. That we are planning a lot of things, but we do not do enough due diligence on the people aspect of what will make our companies successful. Performance matrices are in place. People matrices are absent. Which brings me back to the 2 or 3 things that is extremely important for us to remember in any organization. It has always been my belief, and coming out of experience of being through good times and bad times, and my career has been a saga of either falling into a crisis or creating a crisis. So I am that albatross, I seem to either create one or fall into one. And one of the things that adversity has taught me is that in basics there is continuity. We are looking at all the highfalutin concepts that are there in order to define our HR processes and our people processes. But you forget one simple truth. It is people that make corporations. And because people don't appear on the balance sheet, doesn't mean that they are irrelevant. So therefore, as HR leaders, you have to get some of the fundamentals back on the table for discussion. Number 1, corporate cultures. Today we are talking about, and I think one of the videos that was played here was talking about mental health. Mental health and wellness. Who's responsible for it? Not just the Bangalore traffic. It's also organizations. How much are we addressing this issue in the first place? How many times have you sat with your CEO and told him, sir, if we do not manage the burnout rates of our young people, we are going to be dead as a company. We don't. And what do? We open sites. We tell them, log on to this site and get a counselor and do it, and somebody is outsourcing it. And then we manage it in that particular way. I'm not saying that's a wrong way of doing it. But most often, organizations suffer because of a toxic culture. A toxic culture where respect is not at the center of the equation. Where power is at the center of the equation. Where courage is discounted. If anybody who's courageous in an organization, you look at him and say, ye to bahut bolta hai. Right? He is too talkative. Shut him up. Where innovation is shunned, because what is applicable is what has been done successfully, or what the CEO or whatever is the leadership team or whatever cohort you are addressing, they are the people who look at things and say that this is relevant or this is not relevant. When power and absolute power speaks, when respect is discounted, where courage is shunned, where dignity is eschewed, and where diversity is nothing more than a matrix on a chart to be expressed to the principal or to the shareholders or the stakeholders without real meaning, that is the beginning of a toxic culture. Where performance is at any cost. How many times have you sat at the table and told the CEO and the team, look sir, if you go beyond this point, you are going to get into ethical practices of the company. Accounting books are going to get fudged. boss, whoever the person is. This is where I'm saying HR needs to come to the table. Building of a culture, retention of a culture. I've had one fundamental belief in good times and bad times, that people and performance go together. A dirty house is a smelly house, and a smelly house can't be lived in. We do that every day in our homes. Why do we have smelly offices and expect people to perform superlatively? Who's responsible for it? So building of cultures is something that deserves even more attention in the rapid volatility that we are going through. Your biggest asset are your people. And if your people are going to walk away because they are hurt by volatility, because they are confused by volatility, because they are apprehensive about volatility, who's to blame? You will only be generating business for the placement companies. You will be doing little for yourself. All that you will be doing is churn, churn, churn. Why doesn't it hit you when you have a 25% attrition that there must be something wrong with my place? And what do? You rationalize it. You say, oh, this is the industry norm. Let's look at X, Y, and Z company, and that guy's got 22%, I'm 21.88%. Yeah, slightly better, sir. And the CEO feels pleased because he's guilty as hell. Because he knows if he admits it, that, oh my God, 22% is killing. And therefore, when sometimes people say that you have, in Nestle, in my time, we used to have less than 10% attrition. And one of my bosses once asked me, he said, only 10%, you should be having more. I said, why? Don't you want happy people? He said, no, I want happy people, I don't want complacent people. I said, that's performance management. The same leader who builds a culture must also build the culture of competence. Competence management is again something where you as HR leaders can play a very important task. The KPI setting processes in our organizations, some of them, is completely archaic. 5 objectives, 20% weightage each, total it up, weighted average, do some adjustment and give the reward to people. Have a variable package which is 20%, if that becomes 25%, it is very generous, right? If it becomes 50%, it is obscene. If it becomes 80%, it is unmanageable. And who will be the first ones to talk about this? Will be the HR system. Saying, no sir, let us have this standardization. So competence building is the other part of the process which is going to redefine in the future. You have to build tomorrow's leaders today. But what do we do in most organizations? We promote people based on tenure, by and large, in some of the old companies. In the new tech companies, of course, the younger you are, the better you are. Right? But in legacy companies, the older you are, the better you are. So at 55, you will become head of a business. By the time you are worried about your daughter's marriage, you are worried about your son's education, you are worried about your aging parents, you are worried about your own cholesterol and diabetes, and you have got little interest in running that business. Why don't you, as HR leaders, push for a system which says, by the time a person is 35, 40, if he hasn't made it to a leadership role, he or she is unlikely to make it for the future. I've always believed, and I've practiced this. In my time in Nestle, when I joined as the chairman 10 years ago, we had 22 members of the management committee. When I retired 2 months ago, the 22nd change was also made, which was me. Every other member had been changed and churned and given new assignments during that period of time. And some people who were only 60-70% ready were put into leadership roles. Because what is the task of leadership? If I can't watch the back of my team member, What role am I playing as a leader? What role am I playing as a leader if I do not allow the organization to take a couple of manageable risks in order to build talent? How often do we allow that to happen? We don't. So building culture, building competence, and the third one, I think, which is going to become even more important as we look forward, is compassion. We have lost the ability to be compassionate leaders. Our role models are tough, macho, unrelenting, brutal, and completely mindless leaders. We celebrate such people. Good, aggressive fellows. Look at the pose. Even the pose itself is proving as if he's going to sock you in the face. Why? Because compassion is considered to be a feminine trait. Why should I look at it in that particular way? Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, compassion is a core human proposition which is least understood but most prevalent. Compassion and humility. We don't believe in humility anymore. As a leader, my task is to come here and impress you at all costs. And keep talking about, when I was a chairman of a company, I did this, I was... this is typical in some cities. When I introduced myself in one city that I shall not name, they asked me, what do you do? I said, I work for Nestle. So somebody said, oh, you work for Nestle? Okay, moved on. Then somebody came along from the backside. He said, sir is the chairman of Nestle. And suddenly the eyes opened up. I said, oh, you are the chairman of Nestle. As if that bloody matters, Today, I'm not the chairman of Nestle. I'm the former chairman of Nestle. So your eyes should droop, right? In sorrow, saying, oh my God, this man is a former person. So building compassion and building humility builds performance. Ultimately, the younger generation who are going to work in a disruptive environment, in a diverse environment, where there is going to be a disruption of talent, a disruption of capabilities, a need for relearning, you have to have a more human organization. And for all this, for building culture, for building competence, for building compassion, and for building the leadership profile of the company, you need to stand up and be counted as HR leaders. You can keep rethinking all that you care, go through all that you want to on all the processes and the remapping and SAP systems and this systems and that systems and legacy systems and IT systems that you can talk about. You can use AI as much as you want. But the one reality that we have not yet got home to is the fact that our biggest and the only resource that is likely to be stretchable and tenable for the future are our people. And if you manage the culture, if you manage the competence, if you manage the compassion, and if you manage the leadership, and you build in some of the elements that go to retain a strong, robust organization with diversity and with a focus on sustainability, you build the organization of the future. And it is such an organization, ladies and gentlemen, that I, representing the past with whatever little I've learned, implore you for the future. It is in your hands, and I believe that HR has a huge role to play. Start singing the tune and stand up and be counted. Thank you all very much for your time and attention. Thank you.